Okay, got a couple of things to talk about. The first one, this is basically a follow-up or the continuation of the guy that robbed the Ross Dress for Less store last Thursday. Just to recap on that, there was 3 people that entered the store. This really began as a shoplifting. They grabbed some clothes from there, and as they were leaving, an employee stopped them because they hadn't paid for those clothes. The suspect pulled out a gun, threatened the employee, and then all 3 people left. The big thing with this was we had a Crime Stoppers tip over the weekend on the suspect that had the gun, and the detective was able to get a warrant issued yesterday, an arrest warrant for first-degree robbery. That warrant carried a $100,000 cash bond. The suspect is Martina Louise Moreno, Martine Luiz Moreno. He is on parole and is currently a parole absconder. So our street crimes officers had some information that he may be in a house in the 400 block of South Summit Avenue. About 9:30 last night, they saw some people leave the house and get into a van, a 2002 Honda Odyssey. One of the people they thought matched the description of Moreno. And so they went to stop that car. There was a pursuit that happened. They didn't stop, and because of the warrant and believed that he was armed, they continued the pursuit. At some point, the car stopped near 13th and Prairie. There was a passenger that jumped out of the car, and then the van took off again, and so officers pursued it a second time. The van crashed near 17th Street and Grange Avenue. The driver tried to run but was caught a short distance away, and it turns out that that was a woman. She was arrested for aggravated eluding, and there was some meth and marijuana found inside the van as well. So between the 2 people, the passenger and the driver, the officers learned that the suspect, Moreno, was still inside the house in the 400 block of South Summit Avenue. So we had officers that were in that area, and they were basically trying to get him to come out. They had a perimeter that was set up so they knew that he wouldn't be able to escape. And that was about, I don't have a time on that one. About 11:45, they made the decision to call SWAT out because we had a person that was inside there believed to be armed. SWAT came along and was able to establish some dialogue and convince the guy to come out. So that was about 1:30 a.m. He came out on his own and was arrested on the warrant. The detectives had also, I guess when the standoff started, they were able to get a search warrant or apply to get a search warrant for that home. So after he was arrested and they made sure everything was safe, the detectives searched the home. They found some more meth and marijuana, just small quantities. There was also some clothing tags that they found from Ross's Dress for Less. Not sure about any of there were obviously quite a bit of clothes inside there, but we're not sure if any of those were stolen or not. So he was, let me see, I'll give you the driver first. Her last name is Estes, E-S-T-E-S. First is Bonnie, B-O-N-N-I-E. Middle is Jean Ellen, Jeanellen. And she's 25 from Sioux Falls. She was arrested for aggravated eluding, and then the drug charges, possession of controlled substance, marijuana, and then paraphernalia.
She was the one who crashed at 17.
She was the one that was driving that crashed the vehicle, right? It was all just small amounts. Correct, yes, meth and marijuana. And Moreno,
She was the driver.
she was the driver, right? And it was, yeah, the detective or the street crimes officers kind of noticed there was a similarity between what they believed was the suspect and then the driver. So just kind of it was kind of baggy clothing, but they thought it was a guy that matched that description. And then after the crash happened, then they realized it was a woman. And his charges, he had the arrest for the warrant, the first-degree robbery, and His last name is Moreno, Moreno. First is either it's Martine or Martina, but Martine. Middle is Louise, Luiz. And looks like we've got shoplifting, aggravated assault, and robbery in the first degree. And I believe that includes the arrest warrant as well, which was robbery in the first degree.
And what was his name and where is he from?
He is 29 from Sioux Falls.
So when SWAT got on scene, they were able to get him to come up peacefully then?
Right, yep. And that's, I guess I don't know if it was SWAT or the negotiators, because anytime SWAT is activated, the negotiators always go as well. But somebody was able to talk to him, and once they were able to start that conversation, it took a little bit, but they were able to convince him to come out on his own.
Was the passenger in the vehicle also charged with anything?
The passenger in the vehicle was not charged with anything.
And no weapons were found in the vehicle while driving?
Right, there were no weapons that were found, so obviously he used the weapon when the robbery took place. We're not sure where that firearm is at this point.
It hasn't been located yet.
Correct, the gun has not been found.
Was he alone inside the house at the time when they kind of made that stand?
It sounds like that was, I think, kind of an apartment building, and so there was quite a few people. The officers were calling people out and getting them out, and obviously talking to them, and that's when they learned that he was still inside the apartment. So
I just didn't know if there was anybody else involved.
nobody else was arrested. Everybody else came out. I think most people were probably from different apartments, but yeah, nobody else was involved with that.
For cases like that, Sam, I know for you guys said you guys pursued that. For those kind of cases, would you guys do that if they're armed and dangerous like that?
Yeah, that's one of the, I mean, it's,
That was kind of a,
yeah, I mean, I would say the pursuit policy we have, there's limited times when we would pursue cars. Most of the time, I mean, there's going to be some obviously evaluation that happens, but if there's any type of danger to somebody, a serious charge, there's times when we will pursue. I'll say it's fairly rare, but there have been a few times when we will pursue cars. And this is one of them because they believe that the suspect was armed. He had already committed, a dangerous felony, pointing a gun at another person. Didn't know what he had planned on doing. He was a parole absconder as well, and so those are kind of the reasons and factors. And the officers make that decision as well, but any time a pursuit happens, there's always a supervisor that's monitoring that. So you have somebody that's not directly involved with that, that's also evaluating whether that should continue or should stop.
is that also why you guys decided to have the SWAT team come on scene too, is kind of, because you don't know what could happen in this kind of situation?
Well, yeah, the SWAT team was called. I mean, there's different times, obviously, when the SWAT team is called. In a situation like this where you know that you have somebody inside there, they are potentially armed, they've already committed a serious felony, we're just not going to walk away from something like that. And so a situation like that, it could be several hours, that it could be long and drawn out before it ends. And I'll say this, that they almost always end successfully, where the people will come out on their own, but it takes a lot of time. And so if we bring SWAT in, obviously they're used to having the extra precautions to make sure that they can do things safe. It frees up some of the other officers. There's some that are still involved, but SWAT has the tools and the expertise to be able to handle somebody, and if it's a long drawn out process, then again, I'll just say that, but they're able to handle those types of situations. So there's a few different factors that play into that, but when SWAT's activated, negotiators are activated, and the goal is to have this thing end peacefully and safely for everybody involved.
How common is it for the suspect to come out peacefully like this one did?
Most of the times, I'd probably miss something, but I'd say the vast majority of times we really don't have any issue. I mean, a lot of this stuff is a waiting game, and we're not in a hurry. If you've got somebody that's potentially armed inside, they're alone, there's no reason we need to force the issue. We'll give them time, and a lot of times, I keep saying time, but a lot of the instances, that's what happens, is it takes people a little bit to kind of rationalize and say, okay, it's, we're not going to go anywhere. We're waiting for them. They'll make the decision to come out on their own. So it's kind of a win situation. I mean, that's exactly what we want to have happen, is we want to keep everybody safe. That includes the suspect, that includes officers. We want to make sure that nobody else is put in harm's way. And if we're able to do that and it takes a few hours, that's fine. We'll take all the time in the world as long as we can make sure things end safely.
So you guys still searching for 2 other people from that robbery?
There's still, yeah, we don't, I guess there's some information to follow up on, but the other 2 that were involved in that, we haven't been able to identify them, but like I said, that's still an ongoing investigation.
But that Crime Stoppers tip over the weekend is what led you to this guy?
Yes, the Crime Stoppers tip that we received over the weekend, and that was after the video was released on the suspect, but that's specifically what led to the arrest warrant being issued.
Is that pretty common if we get a tip like that to lead to an arrest in that case?
It happens, I guess. I can't tell you how frequently it happens. We get a lot of information from Crime Stoppers. Sometimes it's just little pieces of information. Sometimes in cases like this, we'll get a name, and it's exactly what we're looking for. That's why Crime Stoppers is there. It gives people a chance to report things anonymously, and so they don't have to worry about being identified. We're able to take that information and solve crime, and I mean, it's a great organization, and we have a great partnership with Crime Stoppers, and this is probably a shining moment of how well it can work. As somebody knew that person, recognized them, called Crime Stoppers, that information went right to the detectives, and we were able to get an arrest warrant issued in just a few days after the crime happened.
Do you know how long it was between the time the SWAT arrived to the time that he came out of his apartment?
SWAT was called about 11:45 p.m., and then he surrendered about 1:30 a.m. And then SWAT ended up leaving about 3 a.m. So once he came out, they still went through to check and make sure there was nobody else inside. So it takes a while. It's not just, okay, he's out and then everybody packs up and leaves. There's always more to it after that. But okay, good on that. All right. The other one I was going to talk about is the family offenses, and this involved another pursuit, but this was about 1 a.m. We had a man that entered an apartment. Let me get this pulled up here. So this is in the 4600 block of East 26th Street. His girlfriend, who is a 15-year-old, is there with her mom. There is a no contact order or protection order in place, so he's not supposed to be there. He ended up getting into the apartment. We're not sure how he was able to enter, and convinced the girl, his girlfriend, to go with him. So we had officers that found that car nearby. Mom had called police, and they went to stop it. The car took off at a high rate of speed. So initially there was a pursuit because they believed that he had forced this girl to go with him, and so there was some concerns about her safety. As other officers were talking to Mom, they learned that she went willingly on her own, so then they stopped the pursuit at that point in time. But eventually they found the car and then found him. This was in the 3800 block of East 12th Street. He was arrested for aggravated eluding, reckless driving, and a protection order violation. The girl was not found. We're not sure where she was at, but Mom was going to work on that, and I don't know that there's necessarily any concerns for her safety. But and do you want his name? All right, his last name, Montez Garcia, I believe, Montesgarcia. First is Milthon, Milthon. Middle is Francisco, Francisco, and he's 18 from Sioux Falls.
Is his last name hyphenated?
I don't know. Our system doesn't do hyphens or spaces, so everything's all lumped together, so I'm not sure. I would imagine there's probably a hyphen in there, but I don't know that. And the only,
What was the first location again, one more time?
where the apartment where they left from,
Yeah.
that was the 4600 block of East 26th Street.
Yeah, across the street for that one.
That would be, Sycamore, kind of the 26th and Sycamore area.
And then the ending location too.
The ended one was in the 3800 block of East 12th Street.
And then across the street for that one.
That, I think, is, I don't know if I have that. It looks, I believe it was near East 12th Street and Garden Avenue. I think that's where it's at.
Thanks, Sam.
And the only other one was the prostitution, and this was yesterday morning. We had a woman that was standing outside of the Women's Gospel Mission on East 8th Street, in the 700 block of East 8th Street. She said there was a truck that drove by a couple of times, and then the guy driving the truck stopped and basically kind of motioned to her to go to his truck. She didn't know this guy, wasn't sure what was going on. As she walked over, she was kind of careful. She didn't want to get too close because she really had a bad feeling about this, but he offered her money for sex. She refused, and then he drove away. She was able to get a license plate number, then called police, and we ended up, had officers found the guy at his home. He was arrested for hiring for sexual activity, which is a misdemeanor, class 1 misdemeanor. And his last name is Lovaas, Lovaas. First is David, David. Middle is Lawrence, Lawrence. And he's 75 from Sioux Falls.
What was the kind of location he was arrested at?
Where he was arrested? The 4100 block of North Alaska Avenue.
And you got the time when the across the one?
Yeah, it was probably around 10:30 a.m. yesterday morning.
Okay.
Yep.
And what time was he arrested at?
And let me see if I have the, I don't think this had a time, but it doesn't. Let me check one other thing here. He was arrested at just before noon. So it didn't take long. That's it for the big stuff. There's really nothing else. A lot of reports, but nothing big out of anything else.
Backtracking a little bit,
Mhm.
whenever the van in the first case with the robbery wrecked, where did that wreck at?
The van crashed at 17th and Grange Avenue.
Okay, and was it just like into like a pole or?
I think it was a retaining wall that they hit. The van was basically going too fast to make the corner, and so it just hit it and crashed, and yep. All right, anything else? Okay, thanks.